Recently, I've had a lot of people ask me, why am I still Catholic? And unfortunately, with the ongoing scandals and now another bishop resigning as a result of accusations, it's a good question all of us have asked ourselves. Why are we still Catholic? Well, I think the answer to that question is simple. We're Catholic because of Christ. Our faith is not in a cardinal. Our faith is not in the Holy Father. Our faith is not in a bishop. It is sad that these men who are supposed to represent the Lord and be our leaders have made such bad decisions and done some really horrible things. And we can't forget or undermine the importance of change that needs to happen in the church. But it's a great time for all of us to remember that our faith is in Christ. It's Christ we hear in the liturgy. It's Christ we receive in the Eucharist. And it's Christ that I believe in. And it's Christ that I follow. While yes, we respect and hopefully are led closer to Christ by our bishops and cardinals and the Holy Father, our faith can never be in them. Our faith needs to be in Christ. And I think as people of faith, people in the pew, so to speak, we need to remember that during this time of scandal and anger and confusion and questions, it's an opportunity for all of us to remind ourselves that while the institution has failed, Christ is the same. Our faith is in him, the one who suffered and died for our salvation, the one who has called us to be his church. We also need to remember that throughout history, the church has faced a lot of scandals. It is an extremely human institution with a lot of flaws and a lot of flawed people. But in all of those scandals, the reform didn't come from the top down. It came from the bottom up. Think of St. Francis of Assisi in the 12th century. Francis was a spoiled rich kid from a city of Assisi in Italy. But it was Francis who was told by the Lord, rebuild my church. Not the Pope, not the cardinals, it was Francis. Think of St. Catherine of Siena, St. Teresa of Avila, St. Ignatius of Loyola, St. Dominic, all the great reformers in our church history. That's come from the bottom up, from the people of God, the church. And I think in this current scandal, it's a good inspiration for all of us to realize that all of us can play a role in being more faithful, more committed, and more real in our own faith lives, that we can push for that reform and that transparency that needs to happen in the church, and we, the church, can be the instruments of that by allowing God to work through us. Back in the 13th century, God said to Francis, rebuild my church. At first, Francis thought he was talking about a building, and he went to rebuild the literal church of San Damiano, which was falling apart. It was only later that Francis realized God was talking about something much, much bigger. And when Francis finally went to Rome to have the Franciscan order approved, it was the Pope, Innocent, who had his own dream about this friar coming who would hold up the church that was crumbling under scandal, under things that should not have been happening, under clerical abuse, kind of very similar to what's happening now. And it was Francis who God used to rebuild his church. My friends, all of us could be the modern-day St. Francis. All of us are called to be those instruments by reaffirming our faith in Christ and not in people, and allowing that faith to transform us and to enliven us. Let's use this time of pain and scandal to deepen our own faith in Christ, and by staying true to him, then we will be those instruments that can truly be used to rebuild his church. Not a homily, not a sermon, just some of my own thoughts that might help all of us through this difficult time.